what we're seeing so far is that the districts that we're working with, their revenues have skyrocketed, and they've done it with a reduced level of administration.
Produced by Podcast Architects.
Welcome back to another episode of The Path Forward. We're at TASA Midwinter 2024. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Rick Fernandez, and we have a special episode, Evolve to Solve, where I have two special guests. Let me introduce Dr. Michael Cardona, Superintendent, San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District, and everybody knows him because he's been on the show a few times. And I have John Brochu, CEO of PracticePlan. So John has agreed to come in our hot seat, and you're going to share what PracticePlan does and what y'all are solving for.
Great, thanks, and thanks for having me here. Really a pleasure to be here, and pleasure to meet you, Michael.
All right.
So I have a history of sports. Was a collegiate athlete. Have kids that played sports all the way up through.
You're a sports dad.
I'm a sports dad.
Mm-hmm.
Was a coach for about 20 years. I'm also a serial entrepreneur, so I've started several companies. And one day I was given some lessons in a facility that I own, and I had a dad come in and say, "Hey, I want to rent your facility." And I said, "Well, I don't rent out my facility, but you can go to the local high school, or you can go to, this private facility, or you can go to the church, they do it, or somewhere else." And I said, "But when you go to these places, here's who you need to call, and here's what time and how to do all those things." And the dad said, "Man, how do you know this? How do you know where all these places are and who to call and what time to do all that?" And I thought, I know because I've been in the coach for 20 years. And so, but I could see how if you weren't, you wouldn't. And so the next day I was booking a golf tee time on a golf app.
There you go.
And I was looking at, you could go on and book your time and pay for it, and you could see everything in your zip code and all that. And I thought, man, that's it. There's not anything like that for sports venues. And so started doing some research and started looking at who could use this, and of course school districts came right up to the surface. So I went and met with different school districts and started talking to them about their process, and then I realized the pain, right? And the pain for them is not that the processes they have are broken, they're just inefficient. And so they fill out a lot of forms. And my history is in doing process auditing. And so I had a partner, and I had a company in healthcare that did process auditing. And so I went and did some process auditing at different entities.
So when you're looking at school district, you're like, oh my gosh, I can help them.
Oh,
you gotta
sure.
be. You gotta be. We're not always the most efficient group. I think I could say that safely.
Well, it's just one of those things that's kind of an extra. Like school districts are like, oh, you mean, I've got to get all the right paperwork. I've got to get all the right approvals. I got to do all these things, and it has to touch all these people before we can rent this out, which is completely acceptable. It's just that the process takes so many steps and so many people. And so what we did is we took that process and we automated the whole thing. And that's what PracticePlan is. So PracticePlan is a platform that anybody can go and they can shop for what they need by sport, by zip code, and they can then book online. And then we take the handling of the money away from the school districts. So, the refund process, the approvals, the liability insurance, all that is uploaded into our system. So it just really makes it super simple. And what we're seeing so far is that the districts that we're working with, their revenues have skyrocketed, and they've done it with a reduced level of administration. And so we feel real good about that. And we're not just in school districts. We also do the same kind of work for churches, private facilities,
AAU.
AAU stuff, municipalities. So we're kind of, which is nice too, because people want to see their options. So if I'm a club coach, an AAU club coach, or if I'm a baseball club coach, I want to go look for a baseball field in my area that I'm going to be in, or maybe a tournament I'm traveling to, and I want to know where I can practice when I get there. And I want to see all the options, and then I can shop and go, well, I don't really need turf, so I don't really want to pay $100 an hour. So this dirt grass field for, $60 an hour, whatever the rate is, might be just fine for me. So, yeah, that's how it's set up.
So are you set up for community members to go through you to work with the school district? So like we have, we're one high school town, 12 facilities. So we have a lot of churches that use our facilities, and sometimes it can be an issue, during Christmas and when people are off, that they're trying to get things scheduled and nobody's in the building. So you work with not just athletics, but nonprofits, churches, and
Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, we just had a private school who didn't have facilities rent from a public school, and they could go in and they sign up, and then they can book their reservations for the entire spring all at once. And the school district has a way to block out the times that aren't available, and then that private school can then rent the public school space, and it's really easy for them.
And so do you take just like, can I just ask these questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what it's for. Yeah.
Sweet. So like you want to, like State Vase, right? They use our facilities every April. So you work with procurement, I'm sure, and get all the legality, the insurance, finance, all that stuff.
Yes.
So when somebody says we want to use San Marcos High School on this day and they've blocked this day off, we could use that facility. Just streamlines the whole process a lot easier.
Streamlines it, and there's also an approval section in there. So if you want to approve every reservation, you can. So I mean, you may not want to rent to everyone, and I understand that with school districts. And so, and there's some bad players out there, and they're like, hey, I don't want to rent to these guys anymore. And so, some school districts use the approval process where the reservations come in, they get a notification that you've got a reservation for April, and it's this group, and they want it for the weekend, and and you can look at that and go, okay, yeah, I approve that, and I can, at that point, you see their forms, and you see your policies agreed to, and you see their liability insurance, and so that's all part of your decision to approve.
So you sit with the district and you map out amongst all the stakeholders at the beginning. That way, campus principals and everybody knows who's doing what, when, and where.
Exactly, and we make sure that we have what's called a beginning and an end date for rentals. So you may not know what your schedule right now is for the summer. So you may want to only do rentals until, say, May 24th, or whatever your last day of school is. So we set an end date in there that no one can rent anything in your district right now past that date. And then when that date starts approaching, then you can extend that through the summer, because now you've got your camp schedules and you've got your coaches' practice schedules, or whatever your fitness classes or whatever you have in there. And once you put those in, then those times aren't available to the public.
So where's the pushback that you get from school districts? So like I would imagine superintendent probably says, oh yeah, I want to do that. And then you go and meet with whoever they tell you to, and then there's, in some districts, this lag time of roadblocks, I would call, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't say roadblocks, but the sales cycle is long.
Yeah.
And in districts, there's a lot of people have to say yes, and that's okay. Once they figure out that we're doing the setup for them and there's not much work for them to do, in a lot of districts, there's the people that are doing these jobs, it's kind of secondary to their primary job.
Correct.
And so they're like, you mean I don't have to do that anymore?
Yeah.
I mean, wow, this is cool. Now, there's a few districts where that's somebody's kind of primary job, and that's kind of their world, and they want to hold on to that world. And we understand that too, and we have to tread a little lightly there and say, look, we're not replacing you.
We're making your life easier.
Yeah,
we're just giving you more capacity, right? And so it's really helpful in those instances.
And are all the districts that you work with, their campuses are required to go through whoever that contact at the district is, right? So you don't leave it up to each individual principal to say, no, I just want to work with these. Like, it becomes a district standard of.
Yes, and the districts can then assign admins per location if they want. So if you have multiple high schools, then you might have that approval process set with, an assistant AD that's over that high school or something, or maybe it's a principal, I don't know, but that can be assigned. And We also have a fairly robust notification system, and so whoever that person is at that particular location, once they approve, then the notifications get sent to everybody they want them to get sent to, both via text and via email. So there's no surprises. Everybody's on the same page with when reservations happen, because that's a problem in districts sometimes too. It's like, well, I told these guys they could have the field. Oh, well, I told these guys they could have the field. And then you got a conflict,
Yeah. So if you're one high school town, you have your athletic director. He can kind of control that
for sure,
and say, but he can also work with the community and local AAU sports programs and say, this is when we can do these things if you go through this process for us.
Yeah, and if you have some charities that, like you want to do Miracle League or something like that, and you're like, hey, I don't want to charge these certain groups, we have what we call promotional codes that are set up within the system. So you're like, hey, these guys want to come in and rent, but I don't want to charge them, or I want to charge them a lot less. Then we have what we call promotional codes that you just give them a code unique to them. So when they check out, they see the full price, but once they put that code in, it's just like buying something online. If you have a coupon code, and then it reduces their rate down to whatever it is you agreed to.
Yeah, churches you probably don't charge a whole lot to, because the board members are like, they're going to get free access to, your facilities.
Well, how much does it cost the school district to, like, what's he paying to access this?
Yeah, it doesn't cost the school district anything, and that's a real beauty of it. So the way our model works is just like if you do electronic ticketing, I mean, we get a transaction fee on every rental. So the consumer pays, which, I mean, that's really the beauty of it for districts. What makes it a little bit of a no-brainer is like, okay, you mean we can use this platform, we're going to increase our revenues, and we're going to reduce our admin costs, and it doesn't cost me anything. I mean, it's kind of found money. And, of course, the consumers have to pay that. But in my experience of being a club coach and being in the club sports world, the money is there.
Oh, yeah.
So I wouldn't worry too much about, well, man, are those guys going to be able to afford the fees? Yeah, they're going to be able to afford them.
Who would you recommend are the key players if you're going into the district to get things started pretty quickly? Probably procurement, I'm sure.
Yeah, whoever's doing it now.
Your facilities rental people.
Whoever's doing it now. And, we can do all the setup for them, but there's also a training. So, here's how you use it. It doesn't take us long to set it up at all. I mean, for a one high school district, we can get that set up in a day. Usually a day on site to maybe take some pictures if you don't already have them. Some districts have great, drone pictures and things, but some don't. And we go on site and we take the photos, we load everything in. But then we sit down with the person who does the schedule and say, okay, show me what dates you need to black out. Show me what dates you need to fill in to make sure that, there's no double booking here.
And then they tell you which community organizations you're going to give promotional codes to.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yes, and they control that. So the district can change those. I mean, there's no keys to the kingdom for us. It's the district's platform that they're operating on. I mean, it's our platform. It's their section of platform that they're operating, and they can change and adapt and make it how they want. We're going to guide them, to help them, of course.
I mean, selfishly, like, what districts in Texas are you in? I mean, I'd be curious.
Yeah, so our so we just launched this company last year, and our very first client was Lovejoy Independent School District.
Todd Dodge just got
Todd Dodge. He just got the deal.
They have a good quarterback, I hear. He's going to groom.
It's funny how you went right to sports with that. Like, you didn't say.
Yeah.
He's coming back for a QB.
Wait, so interesting story about them is just met with their soup last week. They've doubled their revenue. They met their revenue budget for this entire 23-24 year by Christmas.
Wow.
They're athletic? They're athletic?
Their rental budget.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So, they had rented before.
Yeah.
And their exposure has just skyrocketed their rentals. And it's just taken them so much less time. Katie Cordell is the superintendent there, and they just love it, and that's kind of what we've
That's a fast
building.
Growth district too. I mean,
they're
growing quickly.
It is, and a lot of competition for facilities in that market too, because a lot of people in North Texas have those, really nice, almost college level, pro level facilities. A lot of them, so they're looking for ways to rent them out.
And do you have partnerships? So, like Texas State they're in our facilities quite a bit as they're upgrading their facilities. Do you have partnerships between universities and school districts?
We're actually talking to several universities now. We don't have any universities on our platform at this time, but we'd like to. And it's the same product whether you're a university or a church or a private facility, and so it works either way. Yeah.
My athletic director's here. So.
Is he really?
Yeah, he actually is.
Yeah, he should come by the booth.
Yeah,
We could chat.
He's a Denton Geyer guy. He's up from
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Okay, I got one. So I'm on the AAU team. We go practice. Somebody I dunk and break the rim. How does that work? Is that part of the agreement on the AAU team that we agree that if there's any damages, we have to? take
Yeah,
care of it? Okay.
so each district has minimum liability coverage.
Right.
And so you state that on our platform. When you set up, you have all these areas to say, here's what we require, and we can put our district policies in there and waivers and all those things.
You can make it as tight as you want, or
You
as loose
can,
as,
and you say we require this much liability coverage, and then that insurance gets uploaded so that you can look at it before you let them rent if you want, and you can say, yep, okay, that's good, and then they're covered. So in that instance, their insurance would cover that.
John, what's the facilities that are used the most that you see in the last year?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it varies a little by season. We're seeing tracks rented quite a bit right now for the spring because the track and field season coming. Over the holidays, we saw a lot of basketball. And a lot of elementary schools, their gyms are full because there's a lot of rec teams that are, 8U, 10U, 12U kids. They don't need a full-size high school gym. They don't want to run that court
and
anyway.
you have court maybe.
Yeah, and you could do that.
Yeah,
You
think
could
about
set
that.
that up as two. But so we're seeing a lot of that. We're also seeing cafeterias that are rented for things like Boy Scouts or different social club meetings. And some of the times those rentals are pretty low, and they're only like whatever $20, $40 an hour or whatever. Some of them are less if they're charity, and so. But there's football stadiums are rented less. We do see a lot of open fields that are rented. We had one semi-pro soccer team find 2 open turf fields on our site, and they went in and booked them, and I think did in the 20s number of reservations because they're like, oh, didn't know that was there. Now
Right.
I can go rent those, and and that's a place that they needed for the size of group they have.
So I'm curious, just as a superintendent, playoffs start, right? And then you have these coaches that are scrambling to find fields for football, soccer, basketball, whatever are they able to get on your site and say, well, they're showing it's open? Typically they just call each other, but
Right.
they can look at your site and say, oh, well, here's maybe something that nobody's thinking about.
They can. And if that's not something, say you don't rent your stadium that much, but it's playoff season and you want it to be available, you can also set that availability at the times when those playoffs are coming. And so, and you may want to set preference there.
Yeah.
And you may want to say, hey, you want to rent my stadium, okay, and you've rented from us before, and so I'm going to open it for you, and I'm going to go in, and it's literally going in and clicking, hey, it's now available on this Friday night or this Saturday afternoon, and then they go in and book it.
But that helps the athletic director if he knows what his facility usage is for each of his facilities.
It does.
He could have a select team say, hey, we want to use your 2 middle school gyms and your high school gym on his weekend. If he doesn't have a system, he can go to your system and say, not this weekend, but next weekend they'd be available for you.
That's right. And we also have what we call amenity buttons. And so if somebody says, hey, I want to rent your stadium and I want you to provide staff for custodial or for concessions or whatever. So you can have these buttons that they can click to add that. Somebody might come in and do a track meet, for example, and they might not need your help at all, but they also might be a smaller entity and they might need your help. Well, that should cost more, right? And so they can go in and click on, it's a tournament or it's a 4-game day or whatever, and then that adds to their cost, and they understand that because they're getting more services from you. Right?
That's typically some of our pain points when people, will call us to complain.
Yeah.
I'm sure it happened with you.
Yeah.
That it's like, why do I got to pay for custodial? I'm like, well, you're going to have 400 people up here. We have to have people. So when you set your system up, I imagine you said you had the button, so you can default that to it's automatic for this. But then you can also, like our church, we have churches that are like, we don't really need custodians. We have our parishioners. We'll take care of it Christmas Eve, and we'll pay for the supplies. And we're like, fine. But typically, it's all word of mouth.
And then that's a different rate for them.
Yes. Okay.
So yeah.
How do you? I would just be curious. So you're in Lovejoy. So how did the Lovejoy community then come to know? Like, do you partner with their communications department in Lovejoy, or do you have your own way of getting out into the community?
Both. So in their instance, they put a link to our site where it says rent our facilities, and it's a picture of our site. That's an auto link. So if you want to if you go to their website and you click on rent their facilities, you're going to see our little thumbnail, and you'll click on that, and it takes you right to our site, and then you can rent.
And it has their pictures of their facilities.
Yes. And then and then we also do social media. So we are on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We do promotional videos, and they're on our site also. You can go view some of those, and it's usually me or Jessica or Kevin talking, saying, "Hey, I'm out at Lovejoy, and I'm in the gym, and this is what it looks like, and it's for rent. So if you want to rent it, here it is." I mean, just those kind of promotional videos we do. We just signed up Spring Hill ISD in Longview. We're about to release a promotional video probably tomorrow. You'll see it. Yeah. So we do those things to help market, but a lot of the school districts like yours, you kind of have a built-in group, and then what happens is, that word of mouth just, hey, when they start calling and saying, hey, I want to rent, then you can say, go to www.practiceplan.io. It's all on there. They're like, okay.
So have you ever, I'd be curious to know this, have you ever had a situation in your districts where outside organizations try and overwhelm the rental facilities to the detriment of the local community?
Yes, and that's where the approvals come in. And that's where the districts, if they start to see that, and if there's complaints from the community, it's like, okay, we need to tighten up our approvals. And maybe we're not going to let the semi-pro soccer team rent it 45 times. Maybe we're going to let them rent it 20 times, And so that, because we have a local club team with a bunch of kids from our school that want to rent it, and so we're going to make sure they have access. So you control that. Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
I learned something today, Rick.
I learned a lot. That's why I had you on, because I knew you were just going to rapid fire the questions.
That's good. No, I like it.
Well, good. I mean, I don't have any. You asked all the questions I was thinking about. Anything lastly you want to share, John? I mean, you did a great job.
Well, thanks. No, we're just super excited about this. It's not a new concept. I mean,
it's Airbnb essentially.
It's Airbnb. It's VRBO for sports, but it's fairly new to the districts, and so we just feel like being a sports dad and a coach and someone whose kids grew up doing that. I really feel good about helping school districts and others, raise revenues, but also grant access to kids, because a lot of community members don't know where they can go, utilize facilities. And so why not have them at our schools? Yeah. I mean, to me, that's just a win for everyone.
I mean, and
I do have a trick question for him.
All right.
This is
fire away.
The always the infamous question. So like for us, we have in certain parts of our community a very Spanish-speaking heavy portion who may not know where to go. Is your site, can you just click on a button and it turn into Spanish? Like it translates?
It does not do that.
Yet.
Not yet. Not yet. But that's a great idea. Yeah. And, I'll tell you this.
Like a Google switch or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, everything's possible in technology. The nice thing about our company is we own the technology, we own the development. Yeah. So if there's something, and this happens on a weekly basis, hey, John, I want over here, I'd like to see if you could do this or that with this button because our situation's unique to another district. And we're like, okay, well, give me 3 or 4 days. Our development team they're amazing and they're way above my level of understanding code and all that. So, and they can do it. We'll come up with a solution. So we're very flexible in that way. We're obviously not going to try to do all things for all people, but
Correct.
for the most part, we're going to solve problems for you.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. To me, the value is I hear all of my friends and colleagues, everybody is struggling with funding, always, right? And if there's a way that we can get outside the box a little bit and add some dollars to public school districts, like I'm all for it. And that was a little bit of my interest of like, let me provide some information to my friends about, hey, this may be something you can do.
So Lovejoy's money goes into their general fund or to their athletic?
It goes into their general
yeah,
fund.
it's got to, I think.
And that's one way to monetize capital expenditures, right?
Correct.
And so that's how the school districts handle that. Of course, is going to be unique to them. Do you have an idea for how much rental income you have now?
I don't, because we don't have probably a system to track that.
Yeah.
We've never even had a board member ask us that question. And I know I've never, I've intuitively asked, the athletic director how much you spend for security and for out-of-district rentals, and it's somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think we earned back $320,000. His budget's $380,000, so he makes all that back up into I'm assuming that's just athletic rentals, playoff games and things like that. But I don't know that we have a system to track district-wide.
Yeah, and this we have a reporting module that will give you all that. You'll be able to tell we call them assets. We call a gym an asset, a field an asset. You'll be able to tell by asset, by location, exactly how much revenue you're pulling in, and and who's renting that, and how many people are using promotion codes, and it just gives you some eyes into the whole process.
Yeah.
School districts are a business, and it's not all about the money, but if you can make some additional money this way and it doesn't cost you anything, like I said, it's a win.
Yeah. No, we don't have a way. I know we have some ingenious principals that monetize their campuses because they're near Texas State's football field. So he doesn't tell us that, he's renting the parking lot for this PTA booster clubs, doing it for $10 a parking
putting
spot.
that PTO fund is
like, man, you got a lot of money. Your PTO is giving you a lot of money. And then I realized one time going to a game, it was like, who gave him the authority to do that? I'm not going to fault him for that. That's good. He's trying to help his community, but we don't have any way of knowing really what's going in and out of our buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be a good way. It'd be a good way. I would encourage you to, I'm sure you probably have already met with the athletic directors. I know our athletic director has a monthly meeting with Eanes and all these in the Region 13 area.
their deck meetings and all,
Yeah,
all
that'd be
stuff.
a good time to get out there, or even the region service centers. All the region service centers, we meet monthly and always get on their agendas to present your product because all the superintendents are there. So.
Yeah, those are great ideas, and that's kind of the phase we're in right now, is just getting out there, and we're building a facility base, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, Lovejoy's a good one to have because, people pay attention to what's happening up in the Allen area.
Yes, they do.
With athletics. So I'm going to tell my head coach, hey, go check this out because we have an issue with facility rentals.
Dude, everybody
This
does.
is really important, and
yeah.
we're all passing deficit budgets in any way that, like you said, most of these organizations have the money. They don't argue with it. They argue a little bit, but then they're like, we have the money.
They do.
They have the money. Dance programs that want to use, they charge, I don't know how many dollars for these young ladies to be in there, and they're making $180,000 on the weekend. So
the cheer groups, the volleyball clubs, for sure.
They have the money, but it's a good program.
Yeah.
Hey, gentlemen, I appreciate both of you joining us. And John, I want to give you a chance to shout out any socials, your website, anything you want to share before we go.
So our website's www.practiceplan.io. We're on LinkedIn. We have a site on LinkedIn. We have Facebook. We have Instagram. So just go to @PracticePlan on Instagram. All those, you can see some reels and some other sites that we're working with, and see maybe some cool things we could do for your district if you want us to. And we just appreciate anybody going to and visiting. And my email is john.brochu@practiceplan.io, and I'd love to hear from anyone.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And to all our listeners and viewers, if you like what you heard, like what you see, please share, subscribe, give some comments for Dr. Cardona here. He's always quick to respond to the comments. Just giving him a hard time. But
Yes.
thank you for being here both, and that'll do it for this episode.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thanks so much.
You got it.
Produced by Podcast Architects.